Supporters of Burkina Faso's military leader have called for a mass rally in support of the junta after the government said it had foiled an attempted coup and accused America and France of influencing the country's politics. Since Traore came to power, the military government has cracked down on dissent, kidnappings and arbitrary arrests of both civilian critics and army personnel accused of plotting coups, which have increased. Here is our cover report. Since assuming leadership of Burkina Faso in September 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traore has spearheaded a bold transformation, breaking away from the entrenched foreign influence and steering the country towards self-reliance. His administration has challenged traditional power dynamics, driven economic reforms, and ignited renewed sense of sovereignty. But on April 3rd this year, while delivering a testimony on the U.S. Africa Command posture, U.S. Marine Corps General Michael Langley had a unique perspective on the leadership in Burkina Faso and Sudan. Listen to this interaction between Langley and Senator Wicker.
The ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader.
I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traore and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
That statement has stoked outrage across the continent.
France and the United States government needs to back off from any attempt to remove Captain Traore from office. Forget about your plan. He's our own. He's doing exactly what the people of Burkina Faso and many other African countries wish their leaders were doing for them.
Traore's decision to expel French forces and reassert control over the country's natural resources has resonated across Africa.
Emmanuel Macron insulted all Africans in his remarks. There was one part that caught my attention, where he spoke of ingratitude, and that ingratitude is a disease that cannot be transmitted to humans. He is a human. Our ingratitude is not transmissible to him. This is how this gentleman sees Africa, sees Africans. We are not human in his eyes.
The aborted assassination attempt of Traore, allegedly orchestrated by neighboring Ivory Coast, added to the fury of many Africans. Burkina Faso's military junta says it foiled a major plot aimed at sowing total chaos.
The meticulous work of the intelligence service revealed a major plot being prepared against our country, the ultimate aim of which is to sow total chaos with a view to placing the country under the tutelage of an international organization capable of regaining control in 10 or 20 years' time, depending on the instigators.
Under Traore's leadership, the economy has strengthened, with Burkina Faso's GDP rising from $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion, a testament to the country's growing independence. By prioritizing the local processing of resources, including gold and agricultural produce, Traore has ensured that national wealth benefits Burkinabe citizens, rather than being siphoned off by foreign interests. Agriculture, the backbone of Burkina Faso's economy, has seen unprecedented support under Traore's administration. Farmers have been equipped with modern machinery, improved seeds, and necessary farm inputs, leading to increased productivity and greater food security. These efforts signify a leader dedicated to his people's well-being, committed to strengthening internal resilience and reducing reliance on foreign aid. But such bold steps often come at a cost. The claims by the American general have stirred skepticism, prompting comparisons to the narrative that led to the downfall of Libya's Muammar Gaddafi. The parallels between Libya's fate and the situation unfolding in Burkina Faso are unmistakable. Leaders who seek the true African sovereignty often face disinformation campaigns designed to weaken their influence. If Burkina Faso is left vulnerable to such maneuvers, it may suffer setbacks that will take generations to undo. Africa Bureau, we on, Wild is one.
Grant was also wearing 4 silver rings. When the officer instructed him to remove them, he expressed fear of dying and stated that the rings served as protection. He also emphasized his deeply held beliefs of declaring that he was fully Guzu. Without apology, we promise you this, wherever you are, we promise you this, that Africa will be free. Burkina Faso is not the threat. Mali is not the threat. Niger is not the threat. There are millions of us, and we're taking to the streets on Wednesday to show you our strength. I say to you, Jamaica, and wherever you're listening to us from this morning, from Mali, from Congo, from East, West, North, South, Mid-Africa, that this is the time. Because we mourn Lumumba, we mourn Amilcar Cabral, we mourn Thomas Sankara, and we said we weren't there. But we are here now. We are here now. What about Ibrahim Traore? They are fixing to kill him. They are fixing to overthrow him. They are fixing to go claim the... We're waking up this morning to some frightening news coming out of Vancouver. We understand that a car crashed overnight into a group of partygoers. The police say 9 persons were killed and many injured when the driver rammed his car into the Vancouver Festival crowd. The incident happened as members of the Filipino community gathered to celebrate Lapu-Lapu Day. At least 9 people killed, and the vehicle entered the street at 8:14 p.m. last night and struck people attending the Lapu-Lapu Day festival. Several other people were injured, but the exact number of casualties was not known. A 30-year-old Vancouver man was arrested at the scene, and the department's major crime section is overseeing the investigation, according to the police. This is coming out of Canada this morning. All right, we're watching that, and we'll keep you updated on it. Lots happening around us, a whole lot happening around us. Goodness gracious me. We're getting ready to march and to protest on the 30th of April, which is Wednesday. We're joining the rest of the world. We're joining the rest of Africa and the African diaspora to march in support of Ibrahim Traore. We're also getting ready to protest, to march while we support Ibrahim Traore, to protest and to march against AFRICOM. The militarization of Africa was always a problem. We'll tell you more about that later. But AFRICOM, the United States government, France, and the European Union have set their eyes on the Sahel. They'll not give it up just like that. And so we have AFRICOM targeting and naming Ibrahim Traore as terrorists. We have our liberators once again being called terrorists. We'll talk about that in a while. But we're paying some attention to that. And this morning, just to let you know, wherever you are on Wednesdays, April 30, that the continent of Africa, the call has gone out from South Africa. It originated from Julius Malema and from all the others across the continent of Africa to take to the streets on the April 30 in support of Ibrahim Traore. Go out militant. Put on your Gideon boots. Go with your placards. Arrange in your communities. We have to do this across Jamaica. Hold the Jamaican flag too, because we are going to show that this support for Ibrahim Traore is coming from Jamaica. Remember that. We'll talk some more about that later. We're hearing some news that Usain Bolt has written to Ibrahim Traore. One of the things we can tell you is that I have not been able to confirm that. It's all over the social media. I've tried in every which way to confirm that, but haven't been able to. So let me just say that off the top of my head. And I've worked really hard in trying to confirm that. All right. Did I give the wrong day for the date? Okay. Yeah, it is Wednesday. It is Wednesday. So we're putting on our Gideon boots and going out. But that Usain Bolt, situation, I haven't been able to confirm it. And as I said before, I've checked all of Usain Bolt's, social media pages. It's not there. I've also checked Ibrahim Traore's and others, and it's not there. So, I'm not sure about the claim. There's no solid evidence to confirm this. And, I'll just keep you updated if I hear anything, but so far, nothing to confirm that. But I'll check on that. Worrying about your earthly possessions, yeah. Don't make it bold. The Council on Foreign Relations in the United States have also come out talking about violent extremism in the Sahel. And in October 2024, you'll remember that they said the persistent and growing strength of violent extremist organization in the Sahel threatens to exacerbate the humanitarian crisis and spread instability across Africa. And they said at the time that this posed significant security and financial risk to the United States and Europe. You know, they created ISIS in the Sahel. Remember that was created by mercenaries and mercenary governments. What they do is that they tell you that there are major humanitarian crisis, and then they create, whether it's a terrorist organization or a reason to intervene. But they have no real interest as long as because they talk about America's interest, right? And they go in when they want to capture minerals, when they want to capture gold, when they want to capture the resources of a country. As long as it enables them to continue their unbridled exploitation of a continent for their own lifestyles and their global financial, economic, and military dominance. And the Sahel works that way for them. Outside of that, they've killed our leaders. They've assassinated our people. Patrice Lumumba, 1961. Sylvanus Olympio, Togo, 1963. Patrice Lumumba was at the DRC, and we see some information coming out of the DRC this morning. On Friday, Marco Rubio met with leaders from the DRC and Rwanda, and they signed another agreement, because this is not the first one. Congo and Rwanda signed what they're calling a peace agreement and economic cooperation. This happened in Washington on Friday. And they say this aims at easing tensions after the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels seized several strategic cities, including Goma in the DRC. Remember, we told you that the DRC had reached out to the United States asking for help in this regard, remember we told you also that M23 is not just backed by Rwanda. M23 is Rwanda. Let me take a quick break and come back. So, we were talking about how African leaders have been killed over the years. This morning we have no filters, no apologies. We have a responsibility to name the real enemy. We have we are obliged and have an obligation to tear off the empire's mask. Because let us be crystal clear. The defenders of Africa are not the threat. The colonizers of Africa are a threat, have been, continue to be a threat to Africa. So when we see General Langley of AFRICOM wanting us to believe that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the Sahel, which is rising up to reclaim its sovereignty, are somehow a problem, terrorists. He wants us to believe that when Africans stand on their own 2 feet, it is a crisis. Think about that. He wants us to believe that rejecting the military, Western occupation, their own extremism. He wants us to believe that our liberators are extremists and AFRICOM is a liberator. What hypocrisy. What gall. What a tired lie. I wanted a word in front of that, but I can't use it on the air. If you want to see the real threat to Africa, we are not looking at Burkina Faso. We are not looking at Bamako. We are not looking at Niamey. We are looking at Washington. We're looking at Paris. We're looking at London. You look at Africa, planting military bases like poisonous seeds across the motherland. Look at AFRICOM. Look at AFRICOM. Look at NATO. Look at NATO bombing Libya back into slavery and nobody's saying anything about it. Look at the IMF and look at the World Bank wrapping African nations in chains of debt. Look at them. And you remember that it was the West that murdered Patrice Lumumba because Lumumba wanted Congo's wealth for the people of Congo. It was the West that orchestrated the killing of Thomas Sankara because he refused to beg at the feet of Paris. Remember that. It was the West that hunted Muammar Gaddafi like an animal because he dared to imagine an Africa ruled by Africans with an African currency backed by gold. Amilcar Cabral, Mariam Ngouabi, Anwar Sadat of Egypt, 1981, assassinated. Samora Machel of Mozambique. Melchior Ndeye of Burundi. And they want us to believe that Ibrahim Traore is the problem. Every time Every time Africa dreams of freedom, these colonizers sense death. And they say that we are the dangerous ones. They say Africans are the dangerous ones. They say Ibrahim Traore is dangerous. They call him radical. They say he's an extremist. Every time Africa dreams of freedom, they send death. We have to stand up as one. We couldn't save Thomas Sankara. We couldn't save Patrice Lumumba. We couldn't save Muammar Gaddafi. We couldn't save Amilcar Cabral, but we can save Ibrahim Traore. We are the healers. We are the rebuilders. We are the liberators. We are the revolutionaries. In this time, in our time now, right now. You know, we told you in this space during the Obama regime that Africa was never about fighting terrorism. It was about fighting sovereignty. We told you that. You said we were begging for the question. Remember that. Every drone, every base, every fake partnership designed to keep Africa weak, divided, and looted. But today, the spirit of Sankara rises in me. The courage of Lumumba burns anew. The Pan-African dream is not dead. It is alive in every village, every city, every heart that says Africa is not for sale. Africa is not your battleground. Africa belongs to Africans, period. We are not your colonies. We are not your playground. We are not your pawns. And so that's why Africa must rise. We must rise. For Africa to rise, we've got to rise. Africa must unite. Do not challenge me on it. Africa must defend herself, and we must defend ourselves by any means necessary. And so to the colonizers, we say, you can lie, you can kill, you can steal, but you cannot stop the people's fire. And we're fired up because we've got Ibrahim Traore, we've got Mali, we've got Niger, we've got Burkina Faso, we've got Namibia. This is the time right now for us to take a stand, even if we're sitting down. The only real threat is a free Africa. And we promise you this, without apology. We promise you this, wherever you are, we promise you this, that Africa will be free. Burkina Faso is not the threat. Mali is not the threat. Niger is not the threat. There are millions of us. And we're taking to the streets on Wednesday to show you our strength. I say to you, Jamaica, and wherever you're listening to us from this morning, from Mali, from Congo, from east, west, north, south, mid Africa, that this is the time. Because we mourn Lumumba, we mourn Amilcar Cabral, we mourn Thomas Sankara, and we said we weren't there. But we are here now. We are here now. What about Ibrahim Traore? They are fixing to kill him. They are fixing to overthrow him. They are fixing to go claim the Sahel, Burkina Faso, and the entire region for rare earth minerals and for gold. What do you say about that? We say that on Wednesday we are taking to the streets in our Gideon boots to show that here in Jamaica we recognize what's happening on the continent of Africa. We support what's happening on the continent of Africa. The revolution starts with us, continues with us. And it ends when we say, when Africa is free. AFRICOM is not peace, it is occupation. NATO is not security, it is destruction. This we know. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside? And look, how long shall they kill our liberators while we stand aside and look? So if we weren't there in 1961 for Lumumba, and if we weren't there in 1963 for Olympia, and if we weren't there in 1973 for Cabal, and if we weren't there in 1977 for Ngube, if we weren't there in 1981 for Sadat, if we weren't there in 1986 for Michelle, if we weren't there in 1987 for Sankara, if we weren't there in 1993 for Ndeye, if we weren't there in 2011 for Gaddafi, then we must be there today for Ibrahim Traore. And I'm sure that you have been reading the newspapers and you must have seen by now a very interesting story coming out. I think it was in the Jamaica Observer that I saw that story. Very interesting. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I had a discussion with Bert Samuels a few weeks ago, but it's a few months ago. And if you remember, the topic of that discussion at the time centered around the colonial era laws and how or whether they were still being used or weaponized in Jamaica. The topic of a discussion at the time when I spoke with Bert was "Obia me but no enslave me." Well, an interesting article in the Jamaica Observer just a few days ago. April 25. The headline was "Judge Suggests Bible Reading for Man Guilty of Practicing Obia." And it goes on to say, Cambridge resident O'Shawn Grant was slapped with a fine and advised to read his Bible when he appeared in the St. James Parish Court on Wednesday to answer accusations of being involved in the ritualistic practice known as Obia. Grant, who appears in the early 20s, pleaded guilty before presiding judge Keisha Grant Price. According to court records, the police executed a search warrant at Grant's residence on March 25. Upon entry, the authorities observed the dwelling was shrouded in a mist of smoke and there was incense burning in each corner of Grant's bedroom. A plain white T-shirt with various denominations of money was discovered on the floor, surrounded by burning candles in a ritualistic fashion. He had various boxes on his dresser labeled Money Rain, Money House, and African Powers. Grant was also wearing 4 silver rings. When the officer instructed him to remove them, he expressed fear of dying and stated that the rings served as protection. He also emphasized his deeply held beliefs of declaring that he was fully Guzu. Now, Judge Price asked the defendant after hearing the allegations, "What kind of oil were you rubbing up into, sir?" Grant responded, "May have a problem sleeping at night." The judge inquired, "So what do you do to sleep at night?" Grant told the judge, "Me just buy 2 little incense." The judge then offered Grant an alternative method to induce sleep. "Try magnesium and prayer, sir, or try Habakkuk or Haggai. Try to read those books of the Bible. One of them must put you to sleep. Grant Price told the defendant before ordering the defendant to pay $5,000 fine or 5 days in jail. We have on the phone Alex Mile Priest. You know him very well. A student of history, a graduate of the University of the West Indies, who has been seriously and deeply researching Jamaica's traditional practices, African traditional practices, and their retention in Jamaica, and how they have been demonized by the enslavers. Alex joins us on the phone lines. Alex, good morning.
Peace and love, sis.
Greetings.
Peace and love.
Greetings, my brother.
Greetings.
I know you have already done a vlog on this, and you have read this. Your first impressions?
Well, let me tell you, I definitely have more to say. It is my intention to put out a more formal speech that will be targeting not only, as I said in the vlog, the lawyers who say that they are conscious, but as well some of the other traditional groups, Revival, Rasta, etc. Because my impression of this is that Jamaica is backpedaling, big sister. Jamaica is backpedaling because if you look at all of the reports that have come out of Jamaica in terms of religious freedom, etc., everybody says we don't enforce the Obia Act. They say it is not being enforced. They say, oh, you can play your drums and you can do this and you can do that. We won't lock you up. But here in this day, in 2025, we have evidence, tangible evidence that they are still against traditional spirituality in Jamaica. My first impression, really and truly in a nutshell then, would be, how is it that you're talking about a decolonization push, a decolonial constitution? How is it that you're speaking about constitutional reform that's going to take us out of those oppressive times into a time of self-love and self-affirmation, if these are the steps that you're taking against people practicing their traditional religion? Shame on you, Jamaica. Shame on you.
One of the things that I saw you doing, Alex, was to go through you looked again at the Obia Act and you asked some pertinent questions, one of which was, what's the definition of Obia? Then you also questioned how the use of candles and the use of incense, how come those have been criminalized in Jamaica? Elaborate on that.
So, when you look at the Act, the Obia Act, the 1898 Obia Act, and really and truly its last revision was in 2024 when the punishment of flogging was taken out of the Act. In 2014 it was amended. And the biggest problem with that amendment is that if you consider that it was just 3 years before that, in 2011, that the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms was enshrined in the Constitution, and freedom of religion has its own section 17 of that document. You wonder, how is it that they went into this act and didn't decide to just remove it entirely? And it has to do with the fact that they have decided not to define what Obia is because they simply don't know. All they say is that Obia, the definition of Obia is that it's one and the same as Mayalism, so they say. Now, Mayal is the traditional religious system of Jamaica. It is the intersection of African spirituality and Lokono Arawak kind of spirituality of the land. And it shows me that we are still in a time where we don't love ourselves because they never took the time at any point in time to seek out practitioners to say, is what you are doing a religious system, a spiritual system? The next thing is that there is no definition for religion. in the Constitution either. So we assume that their definition of religion is Christianity and the other Abrahamic religions, and possibly whichever one suits them. Because
African-centered traditional spiritual practices are excluded. So I'd like that you also raise the point of how other similar religions or similar practices, traditional practices, are now embraced in Jamaica, allowed to advertise on radio and television.
Yes.
And talk to us about those that have come in and are booming, that are really just by a different name, but the very same thing, if you ask me.
So from the 1950s, Jamaica has had, so before independence, 1962, Jamaica has had what they call the Hindu Marriage Act. So from those times, those people who came in the 1840s, when they so-called abolished slavery and didn't have anybody to work for them anymore, because of course our people would have just left, would have wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and they still needed to run these plantations. So they brought in these Hindu indentured laborers, and from day one, they've been giving them land, they've been giving them businesses to operate and putting them in a class above the dark-skinned indigenous man and woman of this land, Jamaica. So they recognize their marriages.
Remember Indian Royal, because, Jamaican people still say Indian Royal, you know. And it's interesting. Royal, what do you mean by royal? You know?
They put that in a class above themselves, and it was programmed that way. And so they are still coming in. Even the Prime Minister was with this guru the other day that donated how much money to the government. We don't know for what purpose. He did these big seminars and all of that. People can be speaking about palm reading and everything, and palmistry is directly spoken about in the Obia Act.
And these are
fortune telling.
And these are and they're also allowed to advertise. On radio, in media, and the newspapers, on television. They are allowed to sponsor programs. And yet, a man who was burning incense, and I heard you raise this point, is it illegal to burn incense? Is it illegal to light candles? We just saw the burial of one of the chief reptilians in Rome. And they were burning candles and using there was so much incense there. You wondered if the thing was getting stink under the sun. There was just so much incense from everybody. But this is incense and candles. And you pointed out how this is used in the Roman Catholic Church or it's used in the Anglican Church. But then in those ritualistic spaces, it's not considered illegal.
Because it's Christianity. Because it's not our traditional spirituality. Remember, in the 1730s to the culmination in 1760 with Chief Tetch's war, right? Mm-hmm. It was made very clear in the first act.
Yes.
That would have constituted the other act, that it was an act against the irregular assembly of slaves. They never wanted us to have unity. They never wanted dark-skinned indigenous people in Jamaica to unify, and that was the issue with our traditional spirituality.
And they discussed that. This is all in the documents, which is and this is one of the conversations I had with the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. We didn't go into it because there was just so much to say, but I did raise this point with her about the historical context of why the practice of Obia was made illegal in Jamaica. And this had everything to do with liberation and the fact that Africans, before they went to war, were gathering and praying and lighting whatever they should them light, whether it is herbs or otherwise. And then they identified this as the unifier, And so they said at the time, and so they made it illegal. There's a whole discussion in the British archives and even in the literature that's available at our fingertips right now that we can find how this came about. What is it called that you're making, my brother, today regarding, because this situation is fluid. We're just seeing this in the last few days.
Yep. So the first thing, I don't know if anyone who knows Mr. Oshan Grant from Cambridge, Mobay, we badly need to be in touch with him.
Or if he hears this, please reach out to either myself or Alex.
Yeah, man. Yes. Feel free to reach out, Mr. Grant, Oshan Grant from Cambridge.
How can he reach you, Alex?
And you can touch base with us either on Instagram, myself or Kabu, and on Instagram I'm Alex Mayal Priest, or you can call me 876-495-7370. Also, I am calling once again upon all these constitutional lawyers who said they're for liberation, Bert Samuels, Isaac Buchanan, Charles Ganga Singh, all of those big names. We're calling upon you now, my friend. I went to school in Ableton Foot. Any one of you who have decided that you would step up for the liberation of our people, please come forward and help us. Okay? And we're calling upon revival. We're calling upon Rasta. We're calling upon all traditional people in Jamaica, but especially my maroon brothers and sisters, calling upon you now. Let us stand together and put an end to the violation of our religious rights in Jamaica. This is our tradition. We need to claim it. We need to love it and love who we are. That is my cause. The 6th of January every year, a compound does what would have been considered a heathen festival, and it matters so much to them, calling upon Chief Curry. All of those chiefs step forward now. Let us put an end to
Thank
this
you, my brother.
internal reparations first.
Thank you, my brother. We're going to Attorney at Law, Pan-African Attorney at Law, Bert Samuels, right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to our father's land. Yeah. How good and how pleasant it would be.
All right, we're joined on the phone lines now by Pan-African Attorney at Law, Bert Samuels, my brother and my friend. Bert, we were just... Good morning, Bert. Greetings, my brother. How are you?
Yeah, morning. How are you?
Boy, the last time... I'm well if you two are well. The last time we had this conversation, I was so happy that you actually gave me the topic for the segment. And I was really happy about that because it really fit what we were about to say. Obiame, but don't enslave me. And we went through the colonial era law. You went through it with a fine-tooth comb. All the way. And one of the things that you were cautiously optimistic about is that, one, they had removed flogging, they should remove it altogether. But two, that it wasn't being used now in Jamaica, but it should be taken off the books immediately. Did you, in your wildest dreams, think that that colonial era law would be used in Jamaica and that there would be a fine and or prison sentence?
You see, well, I didn't know that police had time to be hunting down these believers. Don't they have things to do? What parish was this? One of those high-end parishes for crime?
St. James?
Yes, I didn't know they have time for that. I didn't know. I'm so disappointed. The decolonization of our laws. I thought that would have taken place by now. And you said, oh, they weren't doing it anymore. Now we see a cop going at a man who is supposed to be practicing Obia, and it is so horrible. It makes us embarrassed about this. There's a little history to all of these beliefs that I want to share in 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. In England, they had the law against witchcraft, and way back in there. So they have people with their own beliefs. But in 1951, they repealed that law that 11 years before we were granted what they call independence. So they make sure that their citizens cannot get criminal sanctions for any belief they want to have. But down here, 11 years before they gave us that piece of paper and that flag, they repealed that law entirely in England. And we are afraid to do what they've done. So you see, what happens is that we are more oppressive to each other than the colonials are sometimes. We are well taught.
Yes. It's interesting that you make that point. I think it's a good point to make, to say that even today in England, you have witches and warlocks and everything, and all of this is perfectly legal, and people are meeting in their covens, and this is something that we shun, because this is not even comparable to the spiritual practice of Obia. This is a whole different kind of situation, but that is that's pretty legal. So where does this leave us, though, Bert? Because here is a law.
I'd like to volunteer to contest this, the constitutionality of it, because yes, and I heard someone previously saying, and we have it on the books, that you have a right to practice your religious beliefs, and you have a right for expression. But if the public could hear how oppressive this law is again, in 4 minutes I could just wrap up what
I am going to leave you now to just go through that.
All right, so here we go. So that about 20 years ago, they decided to take away flogging, because rape and obia were met as punishment by flogging. You were flogged for practicing obia, flogged for rape. So they put it puts on the same balance as rape. And then now what happens? How can you go find yourself going to prison? One, if they find you, they say practicing obia, which I don't know if they know, but the English people didn't know what obia is. So I don't know how they're going to know from us, because that was our secret. Secondly, if you have someone who is coming to see you for therapy, for whatever the obia man did, or for medicine, if you come to see him, you also have committed a crime. If the implements of obia are found in his possession, you are found guilty of a crime. And listen to this now. Anyone that distributes literature promoting the crime is also guilty. Now, this is interesting, because that law was made before television. So when TVJ put other ethnic groups practicing their I can read your palm and tell you what your future and which boyfriend you must have and which you mustn't have, when the other ethnic groups, the Indians, put that on our television, were it obia, then the television station could be fined or go to court. But we embrace the beliefs of other cultures, and we criminalize our African culture. And what we do is we make it look as though obia only does offensive things. You know, it doesn't do when you go to the man and he gives you herbs. They've taken that out of it, and it stretches even into Haiti, where some people of the view Haiti is suffering because they practice too much obia. So that the minds of the people have become anti-African practices in all respects.
Wow.
That's why we couldn't beat the drum.
Yes.
We couldn't beat the drum because we communicated with the drum.
Yes.
So all these anti-African laws, and today, 2025, you and I are wasting time discussing something that has continued to be criminal practice in Jamaica, when the British have taken off all of that of their laws 74 years ago.
Oh my God! What did the judge have to deal with? Because he was fined or $5,000 or 5 days in prison. What was the discretion? What was the discretion that the judge had in this case, if any?
Well, the judge could have said, "Listen, times have passed, and he has to do something. I'm going to admonish and discharge you." He didn't have to put 5 days in prison or 5,000.
So like
the judge said, "It's an old law that I'm embarrassed to be forced to look at, and admonish and discharge him."
But the admonishment was,
Go read your Bible.
Go read Habakkuk and Haggai. No, listen to me, Bert, because we are not calling for the judge to be sanctioned, but it might get to that point. How dare you use your platform to say to somebody who's come in front of you to go and read Habakkuk and Haggai, if I saw the word pronounced, when this is a King James version? With the King James is the someone who wrote demonology. Remember, King James himself was a demonology practitioner, you know.
And listen to this. He is imposing a religious belief, his own possibly.
I think it's a female
on another
judge.
Person.
From the name of it, it sounds feminine. It sounds like it's a female.
So she is saying, listen, the African religious thing that you are practicing, I am going to impose on you another religious belief.
Yes.
No, that is, no one should be forced to practice any. So
that in itself is blasphemy. And I'm going to use a religious term, that's a travesty of justice. That is an unjust justice system. Because how can you use your seat where you're supposed to be, it's justice and human rights we're talking about, you know, and you have a Jamaican in front of you who obviously is a Jamaican who has not gone through your school system, who is not a lawyer and who is not a judge, but who has come before you, humbled and humble enough to tell you that I cannot sleep. And you, the judge, prescribing magnesium from the what you call the seat where the judge sit on a chair?
From the bench.
From the bench. You prescribing magnesium from the bench. But I think this is illegal, you know. I think it is wrong. And I think that the council, what's the name of a council that oversees lawyers? Somebody has to look into this. No judge have no right to be, she's a medical doctor, prescribing magnesium. And secondly, is she a priest prescribing Habakkuk and Haggai from somebody who tells you I cannot sleep and I'm using incense and we know that incense can't put you to sleep? But I am very upset at this.
But you must be, because here it is. Even in certain European countries which require helmets, for example, for riding bikes, the Sikhs, because it's their religious turban that they wear, they are exempted from that particular wear under the Road Traffic Act elsewhere. So people are accommodating religious differences. How can you impose? Suppose a Jamaican goes to court and a Muslim judge says, you need to read the Quran. You know, you need to go and read the Quran. We'd be very upset.
Of course.
Yeah. So there's a religious intolerance of those who want to cast stones, who themselves live in glass houses. You can't be a member of the judiciary and you're forcing someone to go and read a particular religious book when there is freedom of religion.
And prescribing medication. Yeah. Who are you? Suppose you go take magnesium because the judge said if you take magnesium but you're allergic to magnesium. Are you then responsible for him?
So what is happening is, listen, you have an ailment that your religious belief cannot cure, and I am giving you now Western medicine with all its, the side effects as the better thing. It's an invasion of his personal liberties, and I'm say that, you know.
But I know you've been looking at these colonial era laws. We've had many conversations about them. You have been especially concerned about these laws, and this one thing tells me why you have this overwhelming concern. What can you tell me about the process of the constitutional reform and how they're looking at the colonial era laws?
Well, I must tell you, on the agenda of the Reparation Council of Jamaica, we have called upon the government to repeal the Obia Act. I just want to make that clear. If anyone is saying that because I'm a deputy chair, what are you doing? We have called upon the government timelessly to remove the Obia law from the act. Because you see, what is happening is that you have on the one hand this nice thing that says people can practice their religious beliefs and you can't remove churches, you can't remove anything. That's beautifully written in the Constitution. It can't be controverted that it is intolerant. That particular constitutional provision does not allow any religious belief to be persecuted, to be criminalized. So until someone takes the matter to the courts and have a constitutional court go there. But someone has to pay. Poor people are going to be being dragged before the court. They have to go and get an attorney. So maybe we should form a group just to contest this.
I heard you said when you came on earlier that you are willing to lead this process.
I am willing. Yes,
what do you need from us?
Okay, so the person who was affected could get in contact with you, and then because we're not allowed to tout.
Right. Please contact me, and then I put you onto that person. Do you need anything?
Another way it could happen.
Yes.
A practitioner could say, I am fearful that I'll be arrested, and I want my freedom to practice my African religious beliefs. So it doesn't have to be the person.
Alex, you don't know Alex. Are you that you know Alex? Mine not. Alex, my help, priest, is you that. Right,
yes,
because if the brother who was charged and brought before the court, the young man, is fearful, and he might not be, but that would be two people, then if there's someone who's willing to stand up and say, I am fearful because I am a mild priest.
Yeah. Or it could be otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I go for therapy to so-and-so, and I fear that if I go, then I'll be arrested under the OBA Act because it's a person who seeks the counsel and the remedies given by the OBA man. That is also committing a crime. So they did everything. So anyone that promotes, anyone that has the instruments of OBA, anyone that consults the OBA man himself.
Yes.
And as I've said, they used to whip their asses.
Yes.
and listen to the last thing now. It's the only law on the books in Jamaica where after you have been sentenced by the court, do your sentence, come out, think you are free. You come under police supervision. In the law, it says that you are come under police supervision. The police can begin now, every now and then coming to your yard and harassing you.
And this is what the brother who was charged probably doesn't know. It's that he has been charged, he has been fined, he has been convicted because it's $500 or whatever you call it.
It's better say that and go home. No, the police are no. There's a police supervision provision in that law. I know of no other offense. But after you have completed your sentence, you now come out, you continue to be, as it were, punished, which again is unconstitutional because once you are punished, that ought to be it. So there are two problems, there are several problems with the OBA law. It allows police supervision of people who are now free, now designated to be innocent, and it also, well, they remove the flogging, and it also has to do with the freedom of distribution. We have a constitution that says you can distribute anything. You are a member of the press. If you wanted to, for example, IRFM got an advertisement from an OBA man that you need to come and check him because he can help you. Just the same way the Indians are getting their publicity on television. The station is in trouble.
They're also on radio because we've had some of these on radio here.
So you can read for the Indians. Be careful now. This is free advice. You can read for the Indians, palm readers, but you can't read for the African OBA. Okay? That's how we hate. It's self-hate all over it. That's what it is.
I just want to reiterate one of the things you said the last time we spoke is that it's interesting because we have the colonial era law that is being weaponized against the people of Jamaica regarding access to the beaches. And we've been talking about the law that they're using, the 1857 law. All right, or whenever 57. So them using that law, then then here's another one that has been pulled out, weaponized against the people. Question is, how many more are there on the books and how will they be weaponized? Today they come for the Africans and you never do nothing because I never touch you. And tomorrow they come for so and so and you never do nothing. But one day it's going to reach your doorstep because you might just be walking down the road and it's jaywalking that.
I want to explain what I often say. Obey me but not enslave me. What I'm saying in that sentence is this. The people who enslaved us make us believe that Obia was the worst thing that could happen to us. While they have us in chains. Can you believe that? While we were in chains down here, Obia was illegal, but slavery was legal. Let me repeat that. Obia was illegal, but slavery was legal. Can you believe that?
I only believe it because I know it to be so. Otherwise, parallel universe, and I would never believe it. Bert, a mutual friend of ours who's an attorney at law has written a text. She says, Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms 2011, Section 13. And then she says, question, is the judge an Obia woman because she's prescribing drink and scriptures?
That's good. Yes. I get you.
Yes.
Don't call anyone's name.
I'm not calling anyone's name. That's why I deliberately not call nobody's name.
Yes. So in Western medicine, when you go and sit down with a therapist on a couch, and they're asking you about your life, your family background, and trying to help your mind out of order, that's fine. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, but those traditions that we've had, because I went to what they would call a Obeah man in Ghana. It was a woman. She's a counselor. She put me to sit, and she asked me about my life and gave me advice. But she didn't have on a white coat. It was a black woman who was a therapist in the community, and I went to see her.
Well, this is very common. This is very common.
So tell the police must come, but it's Ghana it happens. Tell them come from it this morning.
This is very common. The herbalists and everybody just... we're going to leave it there, Bert. One of the good things that's come out of this is that you have committed to giving your time and your expertise to challenge this constitutionally, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I owe it to the people. One love. By the way, my brethren, I must big him up this morning. Am I allowed to big up anyone?
Go right ahead and big up your brethren and the ones in Coronation Market.
You know that, Cabo. You know that the people at GP, they really listen to you, and don't forget those brethren. One of them tell me that his church him go on Sunday morning. Your church.
Big up the ones at GP. Big enough. Good morning. Because we don't say enough political data anyway. Yes. Free all the political prisoners. Yes, Bert.
One love.
Give thanks. All right. Bert Samuels there, and this is not an easy thing. We take a break. 23 minutes after 7 o'clock, they tell you that our rituals and our symbols and our traditions and our customs are small things, cultural footnotes, sometimes illegal, and they'll drag you before the court and charge you $5,000 or 5 days in prison. Decorations, our rituals and our customs, and the margins of real history, sometimes them celebrated August morning, and sometimes they don't. But we know better. I was watching the funeral of the last great reptilian, and it was phenomenal. The rituals, the symbols, the customs, the traditions, down to the Swiss guards. Dating back to 523, they have kept the rituals going, the candles and the incenses, and some turn the casket upside down, turn it to the people, turn the face to Mary, and so on. Take it into a place and take it out, parade the body through the streets. And all the rituals, some of them couldn't even be publicized. These rituals couldn't even be publicized because they were so private. Their rituals, and it hit me while I got up at 3 o'clock to watch that thing. And it hit me when I realized, well, I always did know, but it came home to me in a forceful way. This is how you're keeping your reptilian order in place, through rituals and customs and traditions and mores. You're doing this with all of this. And of course, thievery. The rituals are the bones of memory. The symbols are the blueprints of belonging. And that is why they destroyed our symbols. That is why they destroyed our rituals. Our traditions are rivers which carry wisdom from one generation to the next. And that is why they have destroyed our traditions and have given us a whole new alien reptilian culture, ritual, and tradition. So we use our own tongues and condemn our own self. We're spelling them words and casting spells on ourselves. You know, we know that in Africa, we see that. And it's dying also on the continent of Africa because they have also infiltrated Africa. Africa is colonized just like the rest of we. Ethiopia was the only one that colonized, and now we're seeing Israel in and Saudi Arabia in, and we're not China in, and we're not no longer gone. But customs are the living practice of freedom. And if we lose the rituals and the customs and our symbols, we lose ourselves. So when the transatlantic slave trade was unleashed upon us, when millions of our ancestors were kidnapped, taken from their homelands, Ma'afa, our sister Marimba Annie, Mama Marimba, reminds us, those demons, satanic forces in European skins, the enslavers, they knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't just steal the bodies. They waged a war on memory itself. That's why I say I have a moral obligation to remember. Look what they did. Look what they did. They banned the languages that our ancestors spoke. And you heard Bert say it a while ago, them silence the drums that summoned the rebellions and the wars. Them destroy our names. The names that we use for crown ourselves in dignity, them destroy the names we're calling ourselves by. For them name, we're using our tongues to destroy ourselves. And we have held on to those names, you know, those Western enslaver demonic names. We have held on to them and we're giving them to our children. And now, even with this colonial law that we see being weaponized against his brother in Montego Bay, a mockery of the ceremonies that we used to hold our communities together. Them still calling the sacred rituals that we do witchcraft, a them a witchcraft, a them in the witchcraft, them in a demonology. This was King James's thing. Them look at our divine traditions because we are a spiritual people, and them say it was savagery. Remember that. As wise as we were and as wise as we are, they said we were ignorant, and we have bought into that. You know, that some of our rituals and customs and practices have survived. It is a testament that the soul of a people is not easily extinguished. Our ancestors were stripped bare, paraded naked, but they still found ways to carry memory. Them carry the memories in the songs that them banned, but we must sing them songs. Them carry the memories in the coded patterns, our hairstyle, cornrow, and all kind of rows. Braid your hair. No matter nobody tell us you can't braid your hair. I mean, I tell us you have to put nothing in it, but cornrow up your hair and carry the tradition along. Them carry the language, them carry the memory in the language. Them call in Jamaica, they called all of us Uno. Uno, because they wanted us to remember that Uno was Ubuntu, and Uno meant I am because you are. I am a person because you are a person. This is what the word Uno that we use means. Uno is a Shona word. It's a Bantu word for the same word we use as Ubuntu. It means the same thing. So our ancestors recognized what was being done to them, how they were being stripped of everything, that when every ritual was outlawed, every symbol was desecrated, every custom was punished. Our ancestors remembered, their spirit resisted, and they said, make we call all our people them Uno, so at least one of them might many years down the line look at the word, connect it back to the Bantu people, and know who they are as great civilizers, creators of civilization. This is what they know. This is why they destroyed our symbols and our customs. This is why they took our memories. This is why we are now suffering from post-traumatic slavery disorder. Understand this. The destruction of African rituals, customs, symbols, traditions. This was not an accident. It was not a byproduct of slavery. It was a strategy that they used to devalue us and made us less than human, and we have bought into that so we can have a judge elevating a book translated by a man who was a demon worshipper in court over the spiritual practices and traditions of Africa. This is our lot, and this is not good. 2025, we got to change that. Because when you destroy a people's memory, you can enslave them for generations. When you erase the rituals, you can turn kings and princes and royalties into laborers and service industries, and that's what's happening on the island in Jamaica. When you demonize a people's customs, you're replacing them self-knowledge and them self-confidence with self-hatred, and this is what we have become. This is not just physical violence. This is spiritual violence. This is psychic violence. This is cultural genocide. And we have to name what is happening to us to change what has happened to us. And yet, here we are. Here we are. I am a living testimony and a living testament to an unbroken chain of memory. I am a breathing witness to this extinguished fire. I am Thomas Sankara. I am Hatshepsut. I am Patrice Lumumba. I am Queen Nani. I am Mualimu Marcus Messiah Garvey. I am reclaiming our rituals. And to reclaim our rituals is not to look backward, you know. Reclaiming your rituals, and as I watched that thing on television, the burial and funeral situation of the great reptilian, it really hit me that when you recover, when you reclaim your ritual, you're recovering your stolen future. We have no choice. We have to honor our customs. This is not nostalgia. This is rebellion against forgetting, because we have forgotten. We have become who we are becoming. When we remember our symbols, we're rebuilding our souls. We must reclaim all of them, all of our symbols, every single one, without apology, or else we're going to find ourselves under the sword of colonial era laws, and we're going to be okay with it.
Don't joke with tomato ketchup, richer, kicker, and more affordable.
The time is
now 7:35. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. You know, so the ninja man thing, they had me a weirdo, a clash. You should have seen me inside here, try to find a dance or come from that time there. What dance was it again? Was it the pepper seed or the folklore? What was it? The Della move? I don't know, but the clash did really have me away. I mean, there, I try to find the dance for match the song. Anyway, ninja, big up yourself. Morning to my brother Bongo Man in Malawi, listening live from Malawi. My brother Bongo Man, how you doing? Greetings, greetings, greetings. Thank you so much for tuning in from Malawi. To my brother Black Rasta. Black Rasta, are you in Ghana? Because I know you should be in Ghana, but are you listening from Ghana? I know you're on the app, so greetings. Welcome to the space on the app. Greetings, my brother, to my sister Don't Eat News, listening in from the United Kingdom. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Also to my brother Kwame Pianke. Welcome, Kwame, the app working for you this morning. I'm very happy that you're in the space, my brother Kwame Pianke, Pan-African scholar on the line, listening in from the US of A. My sister Aldith Hunker is listening in from the Netherlands. Greetings, my sister. How are you doing? On Facebook, Isis Miller, my sister, said slavery was legal and obeah was illegal. So says lawyer and Pan-Africanist Bert Samuels. Yes, my sister, he did. Donna Marty says, when did that judge become a physician? When did she become a psychologist? Is it now part of the court's responsibility to Christianize those who appear before it? I am livid, especially against the background that Indian fortune tellers are essentially practicing obeah as weaponized under the Constitution, but by virtue of race, they get a free pass. Yes, my sister. Andrew Lumsden says, if your religion needs government sanctions to have you believe it, it has no standing. Faith must by definition be personal and collectives must be of free, like-minded souls. Donna Marty says, so what about the proliferation of Indian fortune tellers operating out of who knows where with only a contact mobile number? And that judge should be removed from the bench. How dare she? I am getting very near, very, 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 very near that. Yes, thank you for putting in Ibrahim Traore. Remember, we are taking to the streets wherever we are in Jamaica. Organize it where you are, you know, because we're heading where we can head, right? We in Senton right here. So find your town squares, make your placards, put on your Gideon boot and your army uniform if you have it, and your red beret or your black beret. It's Ibrahim Traore, we say. We are going to be marching. I am calling upon Jamaica to take to the streets on Wednesday in your numbers wherever you are. Plan it among yourself. Call me and let me know which part of the day me want to join something or do something right down here, Senator Ochi. One way or the other, I'm telling you, I'm taking to the streets on Wednesday because Africa has declared Wednesday as a day that we march for Ibrahim Traore, that we protest against AFRICOM and the colonizers and empire and the thieves who want to kill him. As I said earlier, we couldn't do it for Thomas Sankara or Patrice Lumumba or Muammar Gaddafi, but we can do it for Ibrahim Traore. Don't forget to carry your Jamaican flags. This is a day when the Jamaican flags mean everything because we have to show the world. Post it to your social media. Post it TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere you are. Do your live, go live, and show your Jamaican flag and identify that you are standing up with Ibrahim Traore and the people of Burkina Faso against AFRICOM and the colonizers in the United States of America on that day. That's Wednesday, April 30. This is a call that is being made across the world, and we make that call from right here in Jamaica for the rest of the world to join with us wherever you are, to march for liberty and freedom in the name of freedom, in the name of Africa, and in support of Ibrahim Traore. My sister is reminding me that they have also taken the names of our God, our deities, and we find the names of our deities have become words that if you say them, you can be arrested, you can be sent to prison. There's something that is unique to us as a people, the Bantu people of South Africa, of Southern Africa, and the Bantu people generally. The Bantu women who lived in the mountains and at the foothills of the Lebombo Mountains, these women were the first to develop mathematics. If you think I'm lying and you think this is a conspiracy theory, type into Google or Grok or ChatGPT or Meta AI or DeepSeek or anywhere you want, Lebombo bone, the Lebombo bone. This is the first known recorded mathematics. The women, black women, Bantu women, developed mathematics by calculating their menstrual cycles in context with the moon. And they were able, through those calculations, to determine their menstrual cycles. They carved those calculations, mathematical calculations, on what has become known as a Lebombo bone. Look it up. It's mathematics. It's not me, sister. This is Western, Eastern, Middle Eastern, Southern, and every single place scholarship that they have all agreed on. I know there was another bone, but that one came after the Lebombo bone. But that word, without the le before it, can get you into prison in Jamaica. They have made the word a bad word. Why? So that we would forget that we were the originators of mathematics, and not just we were, but women, Bantu women, African women are the originators of what we have come to know as mathematics. They have taken everything from us. If we forget, then we become idiots. We become service industries. And this is what we are. The Prime Minister tells us that we are a service industry. We must lie down for every Tom and Harry, because we are service industry. This is where we are now in Jamaica. When people are talking about manufacturing, when people are talking about nationalism, when people are talking now about survival, the government of Jamaica is telling us that we are a service industry. We do not have skills, and they're going to import skills in the island. And we are okay with that. We say, bond that. Standing by now. Let me know if my next guest is online. I'm standing by to speak with my next guest. We're going straight to South Africa. I am not quite sure if my brother Thao is online. Could you let me know, please? Let me know. I don't know if Thao is online. Let me go check and see. Okay, no, certainly not there. All right, let me know what's happening, please. South Africa, we're trying to get to Thao, some things we want to talk about. Thao is a chairman of the Rastafari United Front and leader of the International Tour de France. He's a teacher in African spirituality, African cosmology, African anthology, and African philosophy, African history, African culture, and African traditional religions. Thao Haram Anuba is the guest we're going to be talking to next. And I want to talk about a few things, because you hear what's happening with South Africa. And so Thao has been following this very, very closely in South Africa. And I am not quite sure why we don't have him online. But we want to talk about South Africa-U.S. relations, looking at the land policy and the U.S. interference. And I think Thao is supposed to be on WhatsApp. So if we get him up on WhatsApp, I think that will be better. I'm not quite sure you can get him straight into South Africa. Shamara, could you intervene, please? I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but I feel like I'm floating. I want to talk also about Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and the apartheid legacy and the reality there. I want to look at how South Africans are reacting to these threats, and also to talk a little bit about the ANC, the governing coalition, how that is being impacted by these U.S. threats and the interference. And what are the plans there in South Africa? But I am not sure what's happening with Thao. We're standing by for that, though. He's scheduled to be on WhatsApp. This is a WhatsApp call. Shamara, could you intervene? Because we do have another WhatsApp call. And so we have another WhatsApp call, which will be my main interview this morning. So let us get this going. Kwame Nkrumah says the forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart. Africa must unite. And this is where we are. This is our thinking. You know, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. We stand with Ibrahim Traore and all African leaders who master the courage to stand up with the people against oppression, against exploitation and foreign domination. We will not stand cowardly or idly by and allow traitors among us and our oppressors to thwart the goal for full freedom and unity. Am I ready? Are you ready? Well, let me go to the phone lines and see if we've got our brother Tautho online. Tautho, are you there?
I'm here, my dear, wonderful sister.
So happy that you could join us live from South Africa, my beloved brother. Thank you so much for taking the time. What a time, Tautho, what a time. South Africa is going through so much. On the one hand, South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice, and the backlash has been, ridiculous. But on the other hand, we have threats coming from the United States, left, right, and center. Can you put that in perspective for me? What's really happening?
You're looking at geopolitics, probably from as far as 1652, South Africa has been a strategic place according to how it is positioned geographically. It is between the East and the West, even before the construction of the Suez Canal, where ships have to come all the way from Europe and pass through South Africa. And that is how the Dutch discovered us, because they had to stop here for refreshment station around 1652. And then fast forward, there was a time when the British and the Dutch fought over this part for its strategic purposes, and that is what is called the Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902. And then fast forward to the Cold War, it was also a very highly contested space during the Cold War between the East and the West. And also now during the BRICS configuration, South Africa is a member of BRICS, and it's also a highly contested space, and that is why a party that is controlled by the Jews of Israel and the Americans, called the Democratic Alliance, is in charge of one of the provinces. We have 9 provinces. This party is in charge of Western Cape, where Cape Town is. So, and then now they're talking about the Cape Independence Movement. They want to create a small Israel here. So there is an active, create small Israel. So what Donald Trump is saying and the PayPal mafias are doing is only pushing that, because we know that Israel always had America and Britain doing its bidding. It was the British through the Declaration who created the State of Israel, and then it is the American Senate that is maintaining the State of Israel, and the Jewish lobby group in the United States. So South Africa is still going to be in a very long battles with these forces between the East and the West. And now the latest executive order that Donald Trump issued against the leadership of the ANC in South Africa, one of them is that South Africa is a friend of the enemies of America. South Africa is cozying up with Iran, with Hezbollah, Hamas, and with BRICS countries, that will be Russia, China, India, and so forth. So it is South Africa is just caught up in between and in the middle of this geopolitical war and proxy war.
So this is really an introspective time for South Africa, but also a time, an opportunity. Before we get to what the opportunity might be, what is the response of the government? Because we know we do have a coalition government. Is the ANC is in a coalition with the apartheid era party. So what's happening there?
Well, you see, the ANC is a sellout political party, if truth have to be told, and for the longest time. Our current president was exposed from the moment he came into power, but we always knew, because in 1980, Oppenheimers gave him money to open the National Union of Mine Workers in order to manage the mine workers, the growing number of mine workers, which was another radicalized revolutionary force within the labor movement. Cyril Ramaphosa in 1974, when the likes of Charana Kota, the more especially, they were part of Steve Biko's organization then. When they were sent to Robben Island, Cyril Ramaphosa told the special branch police that the likes of Charana Kota, they are putting communist ideas in his head. And he's the first person on record to be released by the special branch, because the special branch don't release anyone once they arrest you. So they released him, he went home, and then in 1982 he resurfaced as a leader of the National Union of Mine Workers, a union funded by the Oppenheimers family. And then, mind you, the Oppenheimer, during last year's election, they funded about 14 black political parties in order to divide the black votes. And they did it successfully. They divided the black votes. We can't talk of black unity and so forth. And then the same Oppenheimers, they positioned him when Mandela came out of jail. He was there holding a microphone for Mandela when Mandela made his first speech in Cape Town. And then also positioned him to make him the Secretary General of the ANC. Mind you, he was never one of the 4 different division of the ANC. You know, you had the ANC in Robben Island, represented by the likes of Nelson Mandela, Govan Mbeki, Wilton Mukwai, Elias Mutsualedi, Mlangeni, all these leaders who were arrested from 1963, who formed part of the Rivonia trialist. And then you had the other faction, the other group of the ANC that was in exile. And then you had the other group of the ANC that was in the military wing. And then, of course, you have the exile, those who are operating underground in the country. So Cyril Ramaphosa was not part of any of these groups. And then in 1991, they maneuver him, they position him to become the Secretary General of the ANC. And then in 1994, they wanted to position him to be the Deputy President of the ANC, to deputize Mandela. Yet there have been questions within the ranks of the ANC as to who is this man. And usually when they ask that question, or who is this person, it means they don't know you politically. They have not with you in the underground. They were not with you in exile. They were not with you in Robben Island. They were not with you in the military wing of the ANC. So he went on, he sulked after he couldn't be a deputy president of Mandela, and then he went into business. Mandela and others, and the Oppenheimers, they connected him, and then he came back as a to become deputy president of Jacob Zuma. But also the ANC is always run by factions of interest. So there was a strong faction in the ANC that brought him back, and then he later did what he do best. He backbited Zuma. We end up seeing Zuma being the first black president post-apartheid to be sentenced to be sent to jail under Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. when they come up with this thing of theirs called State Capture Commission. While all the apartheid president died peacefully, no one ever went to jail for their crimes that they committed, which the United Nations declared that apartheid was a crime against humanity. But none of the white president, P.W. Botha, F.W. de Klerk, they all died peacefully post-apartheid, given state funeral. They refused to go through Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And when Jacob Zuma refused to go through the State Capture Commission, they sentenced him to jail. So these are the works of the president we have. And that is really a problem with the Black liberation movement all over Africa, is that we have a high tolerance of our own traitors.
The oppressors.
So
the revolution eats its children. And South Africa has made a mistake. Is making the same mistake that was made in Haiti after the revolution, where they all thought that France was a friend, and then Louverture was killed. So we see this is a recurring theme with us as Africans, and I think at some point we have to break the back of that apartheid, literally. What then, because I know leading up to the election, of course, we didn't have this conversation coming from the United States. But now with Elon Musk using his massive X platform and everything else that he has, accusing South Africa of reverse racism and all kinds of misdeeds. And we have Israel trying to get revenge on South Africa for taking it to the International Court of Justice. And we have Donald Trump saying South Africa is doing 50 different wrong things that some of them you just named out, including what South Africa needs to do with land. What is the mood on the ground, number one? What are South Africans saying, and what is the plan?
Well, we have, obviously the ANC is livid about the whole thing, but we have now one of the second biggest black opposition party created by Jacob Zuma, Umkhonto weSizwe. They were protesting the visit of Zelensky. They say Zelensky is not allowed here. He's not welcomed. They staged a huge protest. Obviously, Donald Trump and his people, they are spreading misinformation. There is no genocide of white people in South Africa. There is no even expropriation of land. These people are still discussing a parliamentary legislation that is not even yet passed. So they are using the same strategy that they used to destroy Gaddafi, and they are cooking the same plan with Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. Remember, America have a tendency of listing a group of countries as its enemies, like running towards the overthrow of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. They had a list of countries that they call them terrorist countries.
But they succeeded, my brother. They succeeded, and they have destroyed. I mean, slavery now is the order of the day in Libya, Iraq is a war zone. Afghanistan is left, without a central government. So they succeed, and we see what they're doing in Yemen and what they plan to do in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso, and so on. So it would seem to me that South Africa has an opportunity to unite or for unification. You talk about the party, Jacob Zuma opposition party. Is there, from what you're seeing, because you have literally, you predicted this, right? We have had many conversations. You literally predicted that something like this would happen over time. As a matter of fact, you were one of the first persons to say to me many years ago that South Africa, in short, in a few years, could possibly see a white president. And at the time, it was shocking to us. But now we're seeing that it's becoming more achievable. So what do you see as is there an opportunity for unification or unity, or are these Malema, Zuma, what's his name, Cyril Ramaphosa, are they so vitriolic against each other that they can't see the bigger picture to unite? What's your reading of it?
They can't see the bigger picture because, you see, behind these parties, they have whites who are funding them. White capital is behind this. The very reason why we have this grand coalition, which they try to label it government of national unity, between the ANC and the party of apartheid, the Democratic Alliance, which we call it democratic apartheid, is that both of them are funded by the same people. And those people, sometimes they have, these are two parties that have two diametrically opposed policies, but their funders are telling them to work together. And because they don't want a coalition of the ANC, Zuma's party, and Malema's party. Now, Zuma convened a couple of black parties before he formed his party and say, we need to stand together as black people. And then Malema wanted him.
I think I'm losing you. Okay. Say that again. You said Malema wanted to?
Malema wanted Zuma to join him. He wanted to use Zuma's popularity to gain votes. But, African politics, they also have an element of African eldership, Now, an elder can't join a youth. Besides that, Zuma has more. This is why he decided, and he has more experience. And he needed to have a space to be able to do what he couldn't do in the ANC, because the ANC is governed by factions, multiple factions, which make it even difficult during his time as a president of the ANC. Being president of the ANC, you are beholden to factions. Some of them are funded by these big families that run South Africa, the Oppenheimers, the De Beers, the Rupert groups. So now some of the people who went on to join Zuma's party, like his secretary now, the secretary of Zuma's party is a former deputy president of Malema. So Malema started to see people leaving his party as a betrayal to him, and then he declared that Zuma's party is the enemy number one. Now look, he jumped the white party of apartheid, there are so many small white parties here. He went straight to another black person's party to declare it to be the enemy number one. So they used to be part of what they call the Progressive Caucus. Now they've missed that opportunity to come together. They are seeing one another as enemies, although Zuma's party does not see Malema as their enemy, but Malema see them as their enemy. But Malema have a history of working with this white party that is working with the ANC. Even before, when they wanted to remove Zuma, Malema voted with this party. Malema gave this party some votes in some municipalities in the name of saying, no, we're trying to get rid of Zuma. Zuma is the biggest problem. We'll get back to deal with these whites. But Malema, if you listen to one of his interview, he talked about the last stage when you do revolutionary theory, something we were taught when I was a young soldier in exile. When you study revolutionary theories, you are told that the final stage of revolution is called mass insurrection, where the masses will revolt and lead revolution. Political party is going to rule them. So Malema explained that the formation of his party is to pacify the black youth anger and to make them feel like they have somebody who's representing them. Because if you don't do so, you're going to the next stage of revolution, which is a mass insurrection, which he referred to it as anarchy, because that revolution is going to eat even themselves who have long left their people. They are living in the suburbs, they are living in the opulences of Sandton, they are living in the white suburbs now because they can afford it. So they are far removed from their people. This is a problem with our liberation movements and our trade union. you always find that the people who are leading the struggle of the poor are not themselves poor. The people who are leading the struggle of the workers are not themselves workers. They're the bourgeois leading the workers. And the people who are leading our people, they don't stay where our people stay. You elect a person as a councillor in your ward here. The moment you become a councillor, he doesn't stay with you here to see your problems of water, electricity, service delivery, the collection of rubbishes and raids and so forth. They move and go and stay in the suburb. Just like where Zuma, Malema and Ramaphosa stay. They stay in some white ward. That ward is not even controlled by the ANC or economic freedom fighters. The ward that Ramaphosa, they live like a couple of houses apart from each other. Malema said every now and then he take a walk and go and visit Ramaphosa. So these people have taken on the west side of politics. To say politics is a game, in public they appear to be fighting. In private they go and watch soccer together, drink beer together, and do all of these things and plot how they are going to do their charade and performances.
So where does them? Yeah, go ahead.
So both of them, where they stay, is a ward that is not controlled by either Malema's party or Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC, but is controlled by the same Democratic Alliance.
Same party. So where does that leave South Africa? What's the way forward? How do you see this progressing?
Well, what is interesting about South Africans is that they are highly radicalized. And that is why even Zuma's party, with the packaging that it came with, what is interesting about this is that the ANC came up with political freedom. It did not go to economic freedom and other freedoms. And then the Malema's party came and talked about economic freedom. They are dealing with freedom piecemeal. Now Zuma's party is mentioning the rest now. It's a combination of Pan-Africanism, of Sobukwe's PAC, Steve Biko's black consciousness. Is trying to be a combination of everything that was left outside. So they are talking the right language. They are appealing to the masses. They are practically the biggest party. They've surpassed even Malema's party.
But what has changed with Zuma? Because Zuma was president for many years. What has changed? I mean, is this a baptism? Is this a new person?
Not baptism. This is what I try to bring to attention, that you see, when you are a leader of the ANC, you don't have outright rights to implement whatever you want to implement, because you are beholden to factions. There are factions, and factions in the ANC are controlled by capital, by white people with money. It's them who are deciding policy direction. So Zuma's hands were tied up when he was the president of the ANC. His hands were tied up. Now that he's got his own political party, he is in a position to do things that you couldn't do when he was the ANC president. I remember one time he made a speech and saying the problems of black people in South Africa, while he was still an ANC president, the problem of black people in South Africa began the moment Christianity was introduced here and colonialism. And the Christian within the ANC had to force him to apologize. So now he's in charge, and he refused to take his party to a conference. He's appointing people. He's completely in charge. That is what makes the difference. When he was the president of the ANC, he wasn't completely in charge, because the ANC talk about a thing called collective leadership. So you can't unilaterally make certain pronouncement or decision because you are part of the collective. And this collective is made of 6 people on top, what they used to call top 6. Now they've added to top 7. And then you have 44 members of the National Executive Committee. You have 44 members of the National Working Committee. So now difference now is that Zuma is in charge of his party.
What's the power? What's the power of the party? And can it challenge a Malema or a Ramaphosa? And will it join with Malema, at least?
With Zuma's party. They wanted to, but Malema, because some prominent members of Malema's party went to join Zuma. And Malema became bitter and declared Zuma's party to be his enemy. So they've missed the opportunity to unite. But again, Zuma's party has a majority. Actually, they were robbed. They were the ones who won the election. They have a running case in court that the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, robbed their votes. Even the province of KwaZulu, where Zuma come from, they've won that province with outright majority. But the ANC played its trick and put up together small parties together and form government instead of Zuma's party.
So Cyril Ramaphosa, just so our listeners understand, had a choice to form a coalition with people like Jacob Zuma, problems aside, and possibly Malema, but chose to unite with the apartheid party. This was a choice that Ramaphosa made, and now it is coming to bite him in the ass. And this is really critical to me.
It's a choice that is a choice that is made by them, because Cyril Ramaphosa and most of our politicians are controlled by white monopoly capital. They are controlled by what I usually refer to them as the three-headed beast, which is capital, market, and investors. These people come to canvass votes from the black people, but once they are in office, they are now beholden to capital, to investors, to market. Now, they said if Cyril Ramaphosa form coalition with Jacob Zuma and Julius Malema, they call it the Doomsday Coalition. They say investors are going to flee out of this country. We're going to have joblessness, all of this type of white supremacy, racism strategies that they are using all the while. Now, they were forced that the Ramaphosa and the DA, the Democratic Alliance, the apartheid party, form coalition, because both of them are funded by the same business. Remember, Mandela and the rest, they did not undo the economic structure of South Africa.
Yes.
So the economy is still controlled by white people. And they're using this economy to scare us, that people will lose jobs, that the economy will collapse, the country will collapse, you'll be like the next Zimbabwe, type of thing. So to get them together in this coalition, their funders told them that the investors will run away, capital will fly, the market will drop. And our rent, our money, our South African currency is called rent. So our rent is very political. Even when they were trying to remove Jacob Zuma, they will play with it. They will manipulate it, and then they will be like, oh, the rent is now 18 rand equals to the dollar. The rent is 19 rand, and so forth and so forth. So they manipulate currency. They manipulate economics, because our economic structure is very much European. Is very much Western, is still controlled by the IMF and the World Bank and the London School of Economics. So these are the people who determine the policy direction by using capital.
And of course, so that explains the rhetoric coming from the White House, which includes South Africa's being the S in BRICS. And the fact that they're making these connections with Russia and China and so on. Where do we go from here? What is your hope, and what would you want to see? Only because we're totally out of time, but where do you see it all going?
Our hopes is with the masses of our people, because our people are very radicalized. South Africans are very radicalized beyond political parties, and that is why anyone with radical ideas can always mobilize them. Like in the case of, people thought, Jacob Zuma is a damaged goods, through those accusations of corruption, state capture. But Jacob Zuma is the first one to bring the ANC below 50%. It is at 40%. Electoral-wise, Jacob Zuma has formed a party in 5 months. It surpasses Julius Malema, who's supposed to be the most popular. Jacob Zuma is the most popular, and he's saying the right thing, It is suspected that it's funded by Putin because they are friends with Putin, that Russia is funding the whole project. So what we are going to see is Jacob Zuma's party is here to stay for the longest. And at the moment, it is aligning with another one, the African Transformation Movement. At the moment, it seems to be the hope for the people of South Africa because the Malema's party, it flip-flop. He's a flip-flopper of note. So he can't be trusted. He said the right things. You know, he talk left and walk right. That is Malema's politics.
We're paying special attention. He has made a call, to segue a bit, for a march, and South Africans generally, I think, have bought into this march on behalf and in solidarity with Ibrahim Traore on the 30th of April.
But 2 months ago, he was making recommendation that Traore and the rest should be removed. They are Democrats. They don't believe in coups and all of these things. 2 months ago.
But now he has come out swinging on behalf of Ibrahim Traore. So we'll overlook it for a minute. But I do know what you're talking about. That is so true. But yes,
the black world should not be fooled by, white system always places people like that, people like Malema who can articulate things, who can appeal to the masses of the people, but they are placed there to confuse the people. So
I am not questioning that, because you know how hard we have tried to get him on this program, and he has never agreed to come on. Maybe Jacob Zuma will come on, and that will tell us who he is, because we judge people when they decide to come on this program, whether they come on or not. So get me Jacob Zuma. My brother, thank you so much. We're totally out of time. I really appreciate you in South Africa. And I will definitely keep in touch with you, because I see that these are really pretty serious times in South Africa.
Yeah, no, I'm going to send you the number of Jacob Zuma's Secretary General, the former Deputy President of Malema, and probably through him you will be able to get Jacob Zuma.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All
right. Give thanks. Our brother, Thao Haramanuba. We take a break. We have a press release from JAMP, and we hope to speak with someone from JAMP next week, Sunday. But the headline is JAMP urges Prime Minister to fulfill promise on MP job descriptions before general elections. The Jamaica Accountability Meter portal is calling on the Prime Minister to honour his 2023 commitment made in Parliament to establish job descriptions for members of Parliament, and to do so before the upcoming general elections. It continues, following the controversial 2023 MP salary increases that occurred without performance metrics, the Prime Minister promised accountability mechanisms that would justify future compensation decisions. In Parliament on June 20, 2023, the Prime Minister defended his policy to increase the salaries. He said, and I quote, "Along with improved compensation, there must be a well-articulated and transparent performance measurement and accountability framework. The other side of the compensation reform is the implementation of the performance-based system and an accountability framework to be implemented in the next 2 years." End of quote. And the press release continues. Since that commitment, draft job descriptions of members of Parliament and Cabinet Ministers were tabled. A joint select committee was established, 2 public consultations and 2 committee meetings were convened. However, since the deadline for public submissions elapsed in December 2023, 15 months have elapsed with no meetings for public review. JAM says voters are now faced with the prospect of selecting representatives without clear standards to evaluate either past performance or future performance. This leaves taxpayers in a position of being unable to hold MPs accountable, even as they are compelled to foot the bill for their salaries. In response to this, JAMP commissioned a public survey in which 1,757 Jamaicans participated. The survey sought to assess citizens' understanding of parliamentary responsibilities, particularly as they relate to corruption prevention. The findings revealed critical gaps in public awareness, as well as clear priorities for them. the findings revealing the majority believed that, one, MPs monitoring public spending was more important than creating laws. Two, ensuring that the government implements the recommendations from watchdog agency Auditor General Integrity Commission reports was a priority above functions. Three, the biggest obstruction to parliamentarians being effective in fighting corruption would be the direct benefits that an MP and their associates obtain from corrupt acts. And four, if one had to make a choice, a focus on national projects and programs was more important than the MP's focus on local constituency development. And it goes on. They say the survey also exposed very significant knowledge gaps. 75% of respondents had little to no familiarity with the parliamentary committees responsible for combating corruption, while 73% were unfamiliar with the anti-corruption legislation. Then that not deliberate? I mean, said apart there. That not deliberate business, the education system and the miseducation system set up for this. You see, now they have an act that has been tabled and passed in Parliament for the Jamaica Teaching Council. It's an interesting situation. We have to look at that act again and again and again and again. I want to talk a little bit about it because obviously there is a big failure in the miseducation system, which they call the education system here in Jamaica. And through this act, I haven't read it all, but I've seen enough to know that from what I've seen, they are putting the responsibility slowly on the teachers. So this is like it's phenomenal what they're about to do with this act. And people are celebrating this act. But there's something radically wrong with it. Because if you don't fix the system that is creating the problems, how do you expect that if you give teachers license, it's going to make a difference? Let me take a break.